Everyone relax. This is TOFOP. I'm Charlie Clausen.
I'm Will Anderson. Hello and thank you for watching.
I like to play games with my daughter. Imaginative games.
You like to play imaginative games with your daughter? Like games you've come up with?
Games that I've come up with, or like... The good thing about the age she's at now is the imagination is huge, and so you can sort of say, "Hey,
is that right?
This is a this is a magic stick," or let's pretend that this is like whatever.
And she just goes with that.
Yeah, it's the best yes ending of all time. Like,
okay,
whatever the. But I fucked up the other night because what I've worked out with the age she's at, and as she's sort of getting more independent and stuff, is like bedtime.
How old is she? 5.
5, yeah. So bedtime's become a bit more of a challenge. She hates going to sleep
because she's got so much imagination.
So much imagination,
so much curiosity about the world.
They do say some people are like there's like not people who there are people who operate better at night, and there's people who operate better during the day. Apparently, that's an evolutionary thing. Yeah.
Yes.
So half the tribe could sleep while the other tribe were working, and I think that I'm definitely a night owl. I'm more productive at night. Gemma, I think, is sort of more of daytime, and I think Iona might be. She just comes like hates going to sleep. Really have to talk her into it. So the way I've been trying to work around it is like creating a game that makes it fun, and then we can sort of like we just parlay that into let's get to bed and read a book and go to sleep. So I've given her this like a book of like magic powers where like we read. There's nothing in it, but I'm like, oh, here's another magic spell that I've discovered, and I don't know what I was thinking, but I said you can freeze Dad by saying his name 3 times.
Oh, Charlie!
I know, and I thought, oh, what a great! And so, because it was fun at first.
Now, does she like Dad?
No. I say because she used my real name Charles, and I was like, how do you know my real name? No, she just used Charles, and I was like, how do you know?
Who calls you Charles?
Yeah, no one. But she did as a joke. I was like, how do you know Charles? She just knows.
Charles.
And I said, well, a little secret. Let's go to the magic book. I said, if you say Charles 3 times, I'll freeze. And so it actually was good at first because...
of course, it's fun at the start.
But it distracted her from like the tantrum that was coming, and it became this little magic trick. And I'm good at committing to like the freeze and stuff. But then, like,
how long do you freeze for? Is
there
a release? Does she have to release?
Yeah, so you say my name 3 times, I freeze, but then you say the 4th time and I'm back.
Okay.
So that was how it was going for the first few times. Charles, and then Charles.
And then she realized she had power.
Dude. She Charles me, and then slapped the glasses off my face.
Of course. I like her style. Of course, that's what she did.
Like it was a full open hand slap across the chops. Like bang, like my glasses literally went flying. I was still in character. I stayed frozen, and I was like, oh God, that really hurt. And then she started like pinching and poking me and stuff. And so then...
You should have put in a proviso.
I did.
That you can't physically...
No. Because she doesn't like... She's a little kid, so it's not going to hurt that much. But also, so when I came out of it, I was like, oh, here's the thing about this magic spell, though, is the more you use it, it starts diminishing.
Less effective it is.
You can only use it 5 times within a 24-hour period, right?
That's good.
So you need to be very...
It wears off.
Yeah, you need to be smart about when you
5 in a 24-hour period is like, I would have gone with 1 a day.
Yeah, well, in retrospect, I should have. But I just thought that maybe she wasn't going to remember in the morning because kids often forget stuff. Oh, boy. Dude.
I mean,
do you know how long it took me to make breakfast?
The power to freeze you, and you thought she was going to forget about that magic power.
Over a hot pan?
Yeah.
Like, Charles. I'm like, then I'm like, oh, fuck, these eggs are going to burn.
Right.
I gotta.
But you can talk?
No, can't do anything.
What are you doing?
Can't do anything.
You've got to be able to talk, at least.
No, but what I do is, and so I've been coming out of it and saying like, oh, like your power's waning. You've used it too much, and I'm starting to develop an immunity.
Because she knows that it's not like real power, right?
Well, I wonder that, right?
Yeah. Because that's the thing is like, it's that age where you're like, I assume she kind of knows, but...
Well, I wonder, right? So she believes in Santa Claus, fair enough.
Yes,
like we've built that myth.
Of course, because Santa Claus is real.
And all your friends.
And to anyone who's listening to this in the car, you're a bad parent because there's so much other content other than what we've just talked about that is not for your children.
Mike, can you put a content warning at the start of this? This may contain discussions around Santa Claus and whether or not he actually exists.
I mean, that is the big one. You can say pretty much anything else. Parents would be like, yeah, it's fine that you dropped the C-bomb in your podcast. My kids have heard that before, but we did not like that other talk.
But I remember being a kid And there'd be other kids who were like, Santa Claus doesn't exist. And I was like, you fucking idiots.
Yeah.
You idiots. You don't believe in Santa Claus? Like, what are you doing? You're robbing yourselves of like, of course he exists. Who else brings the presents? Like, I couldn't believe that any kid would even roll the dice like that to not believe in Santa Claus and run the risk of not having presents.
Well, regardless of how the presents are arriving, the presents are arriving. So why would you miss with...
Yeah, whatever the formula is. Don't fucking question it.
Don't question it. Just say, I'm happy to have the presents.
Yeah, I'll bloody say, right up until I'm...
Good on
until I get a car.
brought these here.
Yeah. So she believes in that. We also have another... And this is where I'm like, well, where? Because I remember being a kid and
Where's the line?
I believed in Santa Claus, but I didn't believe in the Easter Bunny. That was a bridge too far for me.
Never believed in the Easter Bunny.
Never believed in the Easter Bunny. It just seemed ridiculous.
Because it was a rabbit.
Yeah. Well, I'm not an idiot.
Tooth Fairy?
No. I don't think I believe. Oh, I think I didn't. Maybe I did. But she...
Your dad was a dentist, so...
Yeah, it's like that son of a bitch. If I see that fucking fairy in this house... we often... if we need to bribe her or coerce her into doing something, especially if it's a bedtime thing, it's like the fairies will bring you something in the morning.
Oh, okay.
We'll put out like a treat for her.
Do you think she believes that fairies do that? Or she just gets that is...
This is where I'm confused
gray area,
because
right?
I don't think she gets it. Because also she's old enough now that she can correlate that there's like a treat cupboard. And sometimes the fairies just happen to bring the exact same treat
that's in the treat cupboard.
And she's not an idiot. She's not an idiot, my daughter. Like, she understands that. But like Santa Claus, why question it? I'm getting treats. I'm not going to question it. But she will often, so like, what did she say the other night? It's like, I'm having trouble going to sleep. So we talked through that. And she's actually been having nightmares for the first time, which is...
that's awful.
Which is a weird thing, right? Because it's like, of course, there was a time when haven't had night. So the first time you have a nightmare, it's like pretty shocking.
I can't remember the first nightmare I ever had. It didn't even occur to me that you don't have them. Yeah. Like, I guess you've got to have a level of consciousness. Your brain's got to start working in a certain way for them to start to
and
appear.
An understanding to differentiate between that
what's
it was a dream.
What's a good, bad, or a bad dream.
Yeah, but also like...
What's a dream?
What is a dream? What is the... And so we talk a lot about dreams and stuff. And she often will tell me about her dreams where I'm like, that never happened.
Like as in, it didn't happen in the dream?
It didn't happen in the dream. Like you're just making up like dream cliches. Like I was flying on a unicorn. I'm like, that never happened. Liar! Why must you turn this house into a den of lies? Just smash, like clear the breakfast table. Jump out the window.
No fairies for you.
But she's been having nightmares, and that's an interesting kind of...
And when she has nightmares, like what sort of... Are we talking monsters or just bad feelings or like scary...
It's a mix of both. So she was having just sort of generalized like anxiety nightmares, I guess, just like a bad feeling of no, and like just feeling like pursued or hunted or trapped or whatever it was.
Sure.
But then... we started to realize that she's hearing specific things that we were talking about and that was seeding in her brain. And then obviously her subconscious is trying to deconstruct. Yeah. So we were talking about Rose.
I mean, that still happens as an adult, right? The amount of times I have a dream or a nightmare that is influenced by whatever I watched before bed or like something that happened during that day. And you're like, isn't this amazing how your brain works? That you've just picked up that little morsel from today and you've just gone, I can work with that. I can make that into something much bigger.
Much worse. Let's see how we can relate that to some childhood trauma.
You thought that was just a little crumb that you dropped. But...
Well, you think clowns are funny and amusing? Let me just remind you of something that happened at a 5th birthday party. Yeah. So we had a discussion around feeding Rosebud, not feeding Rosebud cooked bones. So we're like, never feed a dog cooked bones because it can break and get stuck in her throat and she could choke. And then, of course, that night she has a nightmare about Rosebud choking. So I'm like, okay, all right. I mean, good that we had that discussion, but unfortunate that you had to go through that experience. Or maybe it's good. I don't know. Maybe it's good that kids game these things in their head so it's not such a scary prospect to deal with in the real world. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know much about the role
psychology.
Of dreams or... You should have asked that psychologist. You were sitting on the plane next to 3 episodes back.
Yeah, while she's munching away on her cucumber.
I don't know much about the psychology of dreams, but I assume that there is some role about like playing through a scenario, so that you can go, okay, well, it's it's become a nightmare there, but that is actually a pretty safe place for that scenario to happen and for me to process my feelings around it.
So now we do a little ceremony, like a little ritual.
Ayahuasca?
Yep. Stripping balls. We're just both lie in bed and we just watch the stars.
So I'll show you some nightmares.
So, no, we just light we've got a little candle. We light a candle and she says a little, how's it go? We just invented it.
Yeah.
I literally improvised this little mantra. It was dream fairy. Oh, was it dream fairy?
Don't bring anything scary.
Something like that. Dream fairy, come to me tonight. Bring me a dream filled with love and light, or something like that, right?
Nice. That's
and
nice.
Yeah, and then she blows out the candle, and then the demons appear. no, she blows out the candle. But, so that was working for a while, but now she's trying to tag on, the dream fairy, because we said there's a dream fairy. I said, if we say this prayer, then the dream fairy is going to come at night and is going to make sure you have nice, happy dreams, and you're not going to be scared. But then she was like, what else can the dream fairy bring? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, can dream fairy bring me a chocolate coin? And it was like 9 p.m. at night. And I'm like, I don't know that they can make to order. But perhaps the dream fairy can. So she goes to sleep and I'm like, oh, fuck. So I go to the treat cupboard and it's like, we're out. There's no treats. And I'm like, oh, Jesus. I'm like, you know what? Maybe she won't remember. Like it's, it's late, after her bedtime. First thing she said when she woke up was like, did they bring me the gold coin? And I was like, go, because she's got a little fairy garden. So go check the fairy garden. So she's in there and I am ransacking the house for anything that looks like vaguely treat-wise. And the only thing I could find was like a strawberry. And I like a nice plump strawberry, but still a strawberry. And so I go put it and I'm like, Iona, I think they've left something for you. She goes over. She was so unimpressed.
That's not my dream.
She was like, what is this?
What is this?
What is this shit?
It's not a coin. It's not a currency. What are you talking about?
No chocolate in this.
No.
It's a strawberry. It's just fruit. The dream fairy is trying to trick me. So I don't know if she genuinely believes in the dream fairy or if this is a clever manipulation to get a little treat, because we do our best in the mornings. No iPad. Don't drink any sugar in the morning because they're like their blood sugar spikes and so that is different though to a lot of her friends. Like so many friends of hers, the parents will they'll arrive at daycare or they're just eating sugar or a chocolate bar because and I get it because sometimes it's the only way you can get the fucking kid out the door. Yeah. Is like to stop the tantrum. Is like here's a Milky Way or whatever.
Have a roll up.
But I'm like, how do I navigate? Now she's starting school this year. I have to start making play lunches. So she's done a couple of...
Yeah, I was going to say, what do you have to provide
everything.
For school?
Everything.
Lunch,
everything.
Recess,
lunch, drink bottle. But
what do you think that's
not like when we were kids.
Do they have like a list of like things that is that still free choice? I mean, there'd be things you
peanuts,
can't do.
Don't bring peanuts to school, obviously, for anaphylactic kids.
Is there other stuff that's on the list?
No, pretty much no. You can, as long as it's not going to trigger anyone's, common allergies or whatever like that. But when we were kids, like, I don't know, maybe it's different in the country, but when I was a kid, your lunchbox is pretty simple. It was like a little thing for play lunch, like, biscuit, little packet of chips, I don't know, nuts or whatever. And then lunch was generally like a sandwich and an apple. And that was it. That was your lunchbox. These days, kids have like these elaborate lunchboxes that have up to 4 compartments.
Like those bento box style.
Yes, it's exactly like a bento box. And like I've seen some of her friends like open it and there's like some gourmet... Oh, someone's made some homemade focaccia topped with sun-dried tomatoes and feta. And then there's some pinwheels with and I'm like, I do not have the skill set. Like, I'm going to have to fucking learn because I will be doing.
Well, you don't want her to be like the kid who doesn't have like, her food in shapes or whatever it is that other kids do.
I don't mind that.
Does she not care about that? Anyway?
What I don't want her to be, I don't want to be buying her processed food. I don't want to be giving her packets of like chips and sweets and stuff. I want to try and make as much as I can.
Absolutely.
So I know it's like nutritious and, but there's also the thing about...
And then that means that she'll probably have to eat it because no other kid's going to swap their stuff with her.
That's right. Well, there's no there's no option. She's come from daycare, which was catered. Like they literally had chefs that would make the kids lunch every day.
Okay.
So she's going from that to now like a sandwich that's been sitting in your school bag for 4 hours.
Well, but isn't that the thing with these? Don't you get like one of those plastic bento box style lunch boxes, and they have a little
thermal bag?
They have a nice little ice thing, and you just put that in there, and it kind of keeps.
It's not like
everything
back
fresh.
in my days. You'd take an old cordial bottle, you'd fill it with, and you'd freeze it, and then you'd wrap a tea towel around it. You used to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
You drink like 4 liters of cordial.
That's right. And and then you have a sandwich that would be in the bottom of your bag, just like squished
beyond recognition
for a week.
And
it would just stay in the bottom of your bag.
And that's the other thing is like actually wrapping the stuff, because I'm like, we haven't had Glad wrap in the house for ages. Try and use like beeswax paper because, reusable and better for the environment and stuff. But I'm like, I think I have to get some Glad wrap. Like it is so hard to reuse that beeswax paper and rewash it. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That wax paper.
I remember when, you can't, like, because if you wash it with warm, it ruins the wax. I remember at primary school, I don't know if I've ever told you about this, but this memory is like, I don't have like so many memories from primary school, but this is like a really clear one, particularly from early in primary school. So I reckon it's probably like grade 1, grade 2, something like that. And someone was stealing lunches. Like it was a big thing.
Scandal.
Like, we all got like brought in, and like it was explained to us that somebody had been like in retrospect, it's probably some poor kid who didn't have their own lunch. Like it probably
but
was
you
like
only steal one lunch in that instance, not multiple. Or was it like one lunch per day?
Can't remember. Right. Don't know. Can't tell you that. Don't have the details of the crime. But I remember we all got like sat down and it was explained to us. Now, in retrospect, maybe this wasn't actually true, right?
Okay.
Like maybe this was the warning. This makes sense, right? But that they had set a trap to find out who it was.
Smoke them out.
And they had made a sandwich that had like cat
Dye
food in it. So they'd made like it looked like an ordinary sandwich.
Who had? The teachers.
The teachers.
This is fucking awful. The 80s, man. What a time. What a time to be alive.
When they weren't bashing you.
They're feeding you cat food.
Your cat food sandwiches.
Dude, how does that make it easier to identify?
I don't think it was. I think the idea was you don't know.
It's punishment.
It's like,
right.
one of these is poison and you don't know
it's
which
the
one.
Princess Bride, right?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Well, what you don't know is I've spent the last 4 years building up a tolerance to cat food. So...
Do you remember? So, did the teachers actually tell you that? Is that your memory of it, or the students? It wasn't like a student rumor.
I think we were told that's what was happening.
Trying to get away with that today. Like if it comes out that like teachers planted a cat-filled sandwich,
not cat-filled, cat food. I mean, but either way, not great.
But they were. All right, so let's play this out. So. It's not enough just to make the cat food sandwich. Yeah. You've got to make it convincing for the thief to not be able to do it. So you've also got to get a lunchbox
sandwich, really.
So you've got to put other and then you've also got to get a school bag, right? Because I assume you guys kept your lunchboxes in your school bag or a locker or something like that.
Yeah, I guess there was the bags must have all been in an area where someone could go through them when we weren't there.
Right,
I think.
And can you remember at your school? Did you have were there school issued bags, or did you everyone bring?
I think we had a school issued bag.
Okay, so that's easy enough. So they go to.
I think we had just lockers. There was again, this might not be the memory, but this is my memory. Is that there was like a kind of a wall that just had everyone had their own individual locker. You put your bag in your locker, and then that was not in the classroom. So I guess it was accessible for people to go through people's bags.
So okay, all right. So there's a staff meeting. Because someone's been stealing lunches and it's upsetting the kids, and so they have a discussion, and
there's one person in the corner going, "Well, I think maybe this is socioeconomic disadvantage, and we
shut up, hippie,
cat food sandwich."
Yeah. All right, so let's skip that discussion and just arrive at the fact that they've all agreed cat food sandwich is the best way to smoke out the thief, right? Okay, so the discussion then has to be well, how do we plant it and make it convincing?
Do you think it's cat food sandwich? Do you think that they are literally... Because this is what I've thought about in the years since, is do I think Was there a cat food sandwich? Or was it just
A
the threat?
rumor to...
Yeah, the threat of a cat food sandwich. Because if the idea was that you were going to use it as like a trap, then you wouldn't tell everybody.
Yeah, that's right. You'd want to see that kid screaming and double in pain.
Right?
Yeah.
Whereas I think the warning of one of them's cat food was probably more like, don't touch it. Like maybe there was no cat food.
It seems like a
sandwich.
throwaway comment that a teacher would say just to kind of like straighten you.
But I
out.
remember it wasn't a throwaway. It was like,
they had an assembly.
I mean, it kind of was.
PowerPoint presentation, cat food, plus a sandwich.
I don't think it was whole school, but I definitely remember it being maybe a whole year of our
so
school.
they literally told a group of children, one of
your
these sandwiches has cat food in it. And that is their brilliant
to stop people stealing sandwiches. It's like that's one of my core childhood memories.
I mean, do you think any of those teachers still alive? Could we reach out to one of them and find out?
I reckon.
Can you remember who the teachers were? Their names, surnames? I mean,
reckon
small town.
I think my parents would be able to identify.
That would be amazing if we could find out, get to the bottom of the cat food sandwich. Because it does seem like one of those 80s things, which is like, oh yeah, you could do anything back in the day.
Yeah.
Could like beat a kid, no problem. Feed him cat food.
I do actually wonder now in retrospect.
I remember a teacher at my school. What was his name? Brother McManus, who was this, he looked a bit like Bob Hoskins. He was this short, bald Irish brother. So not a priest. He was whatever brothers rank in the Catholic hierarchy.
Okay. I didn't know. So brothers are not.
Actually, he didn't look like Bob Hoskins. He looked like Ben Kingsley in Sexy Beast. He was a bald-headed, terrifying Irishman. Like had that, like every sort of, and I can say this because my mother's Irish, every stereotype about Irish being like always up for a fight and kind of like,
Irish.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Like, I took on many of them.
Okay, all right.
But and he like the very first class we had, he like just screamed at us and like no one's gonna act up, and so he terrified a bunch of like 10-year-olds in the first day, and then like eased up as the year went on. We're like, oh, that was a front. Like he came at us all guns blazing just to kind of put us in our place, and then he would ease up. But I do remember one day specifically arriving at school in the playground, and I've got bad circulation, so my hands are really cold, and I was walking around with my hands like that. And he called me over. He's like, Clausen, what's going on? And I said, oh, my hands are freezing. He said, show me. And I put my hands out, and he just went whack and hit my hands as hard as he could, like to the point that I was like, ah. And it's like, that'll get the blood flowing. And I remember just like, it took me about 10 minutes before I could move my fingers again. They hurt so much. It's like, he just struck a child, and totally fine. Okay, no problem with that. You can do that. He also hit a kid in class with a ruler, but missed. It was a metal ruler. He went to hit the kid on the arm or whatever for reaching to his desk or into his bag when he shouldn't have been, but missed. And the ruler rebounded off the desk, flying through the air, and missed another kid by like half a centimeter. Again, no problem. That's fine.
Oh, I mean, the punishments that we used to have at our were brutal. Like hitting with like rulers,
leather
metal
straps.
rulers, leather straps. Like there was a chemistry teacher that I had at high school that if we had like higher stool chairs in chemistry because of the the lab desks. And if you rocked on one, like if you rocked forward on the stool, he would make you hold the stool out in front of you, like a challenge on Survivor. Yeah. Until basically you just broke like from the pain of it.
Yeah. What happened? Like, at what point was it the slow?
Stop being cruel to
children? Was it something we just woke up one day and we're like, oh, we don't do that? Or was it the generation who grew up being beaten?
Well, I have a bit about this in last year's show, but I did a little bit of research.
Don't use your old material on us.
I'm not using my old material. We've stumbled into an area that I had talked about in the show. Thus, I was flagging it.
Yes, okay.
Generation X. Mm. Are you Generation X? You're Generation
I think
X.
I just sneak in.
Yeah, you'd be like lower end of Generation X. But my theory is that there are very few things that define Generation X, but one of them is that we are the only generation that when we went to school, they could still hit you with anything, anytime. But by the time we finished school, they could not hit you at all. Yeah, and we lived through the gradual detransition from like Yeah, because they could like basically do whatever when you started. I mean, at
Yeah.
least when I started, maybe
Yeah,
by the
yeah.
time you started, I don't know. But by the end, basically, they couldn't hit you at
I
all.
do remember being threatened with the strap for laughing in church. Like me and two other guys got taken into the principal's office. Would have been like grade 6, year 7 maybe. And they showed us the strap, and it was
Yeah.
like a thick bit of leather, like, you know, 1/4 inch thick bit of leather. And the threat was very much, if you guys do that again, you're going to get like 6 of these. It was like, okay. But then, yeah, by the end of, so 6 years later, I don't recall any kid being strapped or anything like that. So I guess you're right. It did happen in that course of school.
Did your parents like use physical punishment?
My dad hit me once
Yeah.
and then apologized for it.
Like not wooden spoon or anything like that. Did you ever
No,
get the...
like, and it wasn't like it wasn't like it was more of an impulsive strike as opposed to come here, you're going to get spanked for whatever you've done or whatever. I remember Dad did it once and I fucking deserved it. Because he told me.
That's the other thing, right? Like sometimes you're like, yeah, I got to wear this one.
I can remember.
I knew what the rules were, and I transgressed.
I remember it so clearly because Mum, on a rare instance, Mum had gone out for maybe like a girls' drinks or a girls' night or whatever, and so Dad had to be in charge of bedtime and stuff, and all the older kids, because I was the youngest, were all in the TV room watching Flash Gordon. And I remember like I was so like annoyed that I couldn't get, and I had to brush my teeth and go to bed, and I could hear the Flash Gordon theme. And I was like, it's amazing. And I remember like brushing my teeth and sticking my head up from the bathroom, and my sister Sophie, who's like 10 years older than me, saying, "Hey, do you want to come see Flash Gordon?" And in my head, I'm like, well, Sophie says it's okay, so I guess that
okay.
overrides every
What Dad
other
said.
instruction. And so I remember like sitting on her lap and watching Flash Gordon and just hearing the footsteps of Dad and like looking and seeing his silhouette like moving towards me and just thinking, I'm fucked here. Like I'm absolutely fucked. I've disobeyed a direct order. And so he grabbed me by the arm and took me back to the bathroom. And I remember I was brushing my teeth and he just like clipped me over the back of the head and I started crying. And then when I got to bed, Mum must have got home because I heard them having a discussion in the kitchen. And then and he came in and sat down and like apologized, which maybe like in, you know, it would have been 1983 or something. It's
Pretty
probably progressive to Dad to actually.
Yeah.
And then Mum, probably about the same era, she used to sell Amway. So she would, you know, buy a bunch of Amway products and then on-sell it. And I had a bunch of friends around and we grabbed all her Amway products and sprayed all the soap out and just basically wasted.
Okay.
and so she smacked me on the back of the head. I don't recall an apology for that one.
Well, you deserve that.
Yeah.
My parents, I would absolutely not classify as being violent. And by the standards of the time and the world in which we live, particularly the country where, like, I think there is a bit more of that rough and ready sort of approach to life, which they almost pride themselves on a bit, right?
Yeah.
the wooden spoon was being belt on the backside with the wooden spoon was like a common punishment.
Right.
But
was it an impulsive thing or was it a set punishment?
No, it
as
was
in you come here and get spanked?
No, the worst thing was you'd often be sent to get the wooden spoon yourself.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
The indignity.
The slowest walk of all time to go and grab that wooden spoon.
You're just weighing them up. Which
you
one's the
go
lighter
and get
one?
that wooden spoon so I can hit you with it, which is like the ultimate power move, right?
Yeah.
Give you time to reconsider your actions. And I don't feel like I have no lasting. This is like I don't have to deal with these questions as a person who's not a parent, right? But that idea of being in a world where for most of human civilization, discipline by parents was done through anger or violence or fear or whatever it is. And that I saw at the beach the other day, there was some, when you are walking just along and you see something happening up ahead and you can immediately pick up the kind of vibe of what's happening. And there was a dad really aggressively yelling at a kid who's like a boy who was 12, 13, I reckon, probably, if I had to have a guess. He had one of those, what do you call those, the boards, the wave boards where they
skim on the water?
They skim on the water, they run along.
Wakeboard.
Wakeboard, is that what they are?
Or something like that.
Yeah, so he had one of those and he was really and I was one of those situations where you're like, oh man, this feels like,
Someone should
am I going to have to am I going to have to say something here? And then I like noticed the mum was there and there was another kid there as well. And then like, I don't know, like the dad and the kids seemed fine afterwards. And I was like, I wonder if this is like part of how they always communicate, or I kind of got the impression maybe the kid had just done something really dangerous. Like, like that age, you're in the surf, you've done something that you shouldn't have done, and the dad really felt like he needed to make the point.
Yeah.
And I was like, it felt too aggressive to me, like regardless. But I also think that if you're like a parent and your kid's just done something that might have endangered their life or whatever, they don't know, I can imagine that instinct to really make the point that this is serious and they're not mucking around is
100%. That's what I was just going to say.
so hard.
I had this discussion with my mate who's a parent last night, got a couple of kids a bit younger than Iona. But he's he's like, I didn't realize I was such a disciplinarian until I became a dad, and now he's very much about routines. And we're talking about, I said that the biggest challenge I find being a dad and what I'm sort of working better at now that I've been doing it for a few years, is like I was very quick to anger or get triggered, especially when she was being deliberately disobedient and kids can be really provocative.
Of course.
And they have
because
no
they're trying to
barriers.
work out their boundaries and they don't understand. And
I found it very hard not to bite back or not to be sucked in, especially if you're tired, it's been a long day and blah, blah, blah. And I'm getting better at that. But I said the thing that I used to feel such guilt and shame after I'd taken the bait, like, I've been provoked.
Of course.
And it's like, Jesus Christ.
By a child.
By a child.
Yeah.
Someone who's been on this planet for less than like
what
5 years.
I've been bested by an infant.
A battle of wits, essentially.
And
like,
I lost.
Psychological warfare, and I lost. But
But they have the huge advantage, which is that
they emotionally...
You love them you love them in a way that they can't comprehend.
Yeah,
that you would do anything, for them, to protect them, etc. And so you are so sensitive to every aspect of, their life and what they are. Whereas kids don't have the consciousness to understand
and don't for like 16 to 17, 18 years, like their brains aren't fully
if
formed.
You're lucky.
Yeah, like and because it's weird, because what happens with kids is that they are behaving in a way and sounding in a way that is, could be quite articulate and makes it appear as if they are very conscious of what they're doing, but they're not. And they haven't developed the part of their brain that allows them to evaluate or regulate emotions and behavior and, consideration of others and all that kind of stuff. And so in many ways, like, they're doing exactly what they're meant to be doing, and it's up to you to be able to recognize that and use tactics or find ways that, like, for instance, Gemma had a work thing. We arrived back at the hotel. There was, some work colleagues there, and Gem went over and they wanted to discuss work. And I was like, okay, well, I'll take Iona. And she didn't want it. She wanted to stay with Mum. And so she started having a full meltdown. And I was like, okay, and I'm trying to do the, let's do this easy, but it's creating a scene. It's getting a bit awkward and uncomfortable. And so I'm like, all right, I'm just going to have to extract. It's going to be a hard extraction. Like, go. Get the Black Hawk helicopter.
Quick, try to be efficient.
Yeah.
Don't linger.
So I literally,
in and out.
So I literally scooped her up and had like nails down the face and biting on the neck. Like it was a full tantrum, right? And so like got her up in the room and got her into the room and she was so furious. And like you are just responding as you would have like with with anyone who's behaving like that. And so at first and then I just had to step out of myself and be like, okay, man, like you don't actually have to. You don't have to take.
You don't
this,
have to match her.
You don't
energy.
have to match her energy, and you also don't have to take this on. And it's also you're well within your
this
rights
is just
to
like,
remove yourself from the situation because she's gonna.
You're taking it as if she's a person who understands what she's doing. When she doesn't really.
Yeah, and also you're taking it as something that needs to be quashed.
Yes.
In many ways,
you cannot
cannot de-escalate this situation
You've
through
got
force.
To let it play out.
Got to let it play out. Yeah. And so it was a bit tough because I was in a hotel room, so there was nowhere for me to hide. But because she kept sort of saying, it was one of the things where it's like, I couldn't go near her, but at the same time, she didn't want me to go. And so I just said, look, I'm just going to be in this side of the room. When you want me, I'll be here. But, and she's yelling all these horrible things about me, all this kind of stuff. I hate you. And which is fine. And I just kept responding with, that's fine. I love you. Don't worry about it. It's okay. Because they say, the little bit of reading I've done, they say that kids are going to experience really big emotions. And if you are getting the kid to shut down or you are shutting the kid down, then what they're going to grow up learning is that big emotions are horrible and I shouldn't show
Yes.
people how I feel.
Okay.
I should sit on that and I should hide that. So you want them to say, you're safe with me. It's okay for you until they get to a point in which they can start to regulate and go, oh, okay, that's not appropriate behavior, or my behavior scaring someone, or do I really feel that badly about it? And more often than not, like she does, like of course she calms down and she regulates and she gets back to a normal level. But that's taken me like all of 5 years to kind of get to the point where I'm not panicking, because you have a instinctive reaction to this that isn't based in logic or rationality or any of the new age parenting literature you've read. It's just someone screaming at me and trying to hit me.
Yes,
and like you just have like an impulsive reaction to it. But I think now, I think about my dad and I have so much extra. I feel bad because when I often characterize my father, I'm always like, oh, he was an anxious man and, was always very tightly wound up and stuff. But then 9 kids in an era in which men weren't really encouraged or allowed to be active parts of the child rearing, in which there wasn't the amount of literature we have now about, child rearing, and just doing his best, and it's funny because I feel like it's easy to sort of target, use phrases like toxic masculinity or whatever. But when someone doesn't have any other experience or exposure to anything else, then that's all they know.
Of course.
Like you can't sort of just, it's too easy to pin someone down on this one thing as if, well, they should just know. We didn't.
They should just know that thing that no one in human history apart from the
showed
last
them.
20 years has known. Yeah, I know. We are so quick to judge everything by
Today's standards.
Well, we are so quick to judge people for not knowing something we just learned. That's the thing that, when did you, if you go back and listen to the way we've talked about trans issues on this podcast over the 14, 15 years that we've been doing this, you will see a progression in the understanding that we've had around that. I don't think we were terrible people when we first started. I just think if you looked at the world then and the kind of awareness and understanding of what it was, we just didn't know, right?
Yeah.
You think because you do have that knowledge and understanding, you think, how could I have ever not had that knowledge and understanding? But you don't know what it's like to not have it.
Yeah. Did you see that clip? I don't know if it's recent, but I think it might be fairly recent. The Jerry Seinfeld sort of retracting. He said,
"Oh yeah, his comments about
the left is ruining comedy," and he's like, "I was wrong."
Yeah.
About that. And the analogy he used about the Olympic skier, and it's like, you set those flags up anywhere and the skier's got to make the gate. It doesn't matter. And that's what happens in culture. It changes. So yeah, I was wrong. No one's ruining everything.
Yeah.
Of course, culture and society is going to change. And if you are good at your job and you are specific enough with what you're saying, you make broad statements. It's going to be clunky and it's going to offend someone, but there is a way to thread the needle. You just need to work a bit harder and be more specific.
And that is the interesting thing about, obviously, there's been an expansion and retraction around. I mean, that's a terrible time again for trans people who, it's fair to say, have never had the greatest, it's never been a great time for people, but there felt like there was an increasing awareness, acceptance, and place for, trans people, trans stories, etc. in our society, which is obviously being wound.
You might
back
say there's been some diversity, equity, and inclusion of recent times.
And it's just been wound back so severely, so quickly that you wonder what happens next. Do we keep going forward again? Is this just a natural, is this how it works? Do we push forward and then things go back a bit? Or will we look back at, because there are some people who are saying, well, that was a weird blip and we will look back on this time as being this weird
Everyone
time where everyone
crazy,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine that's what's going to happen. And I hope for, people I know who are trans and that is not what happens because they are, people who have real lives and real experiences who, deserve to be seen for who they are. But
you only need to look back at the past, right? To see any minority group that was targeted or blamed for whatever, the ills of society were at that time. And it never stays that group. That group then becomes.
Yeah.
So look, the good news is, trans people, you'll be able to bully another minority in about 20 years' time. You'll find a group that you can bully.
The reason we stopped being racist to the Greeks and Italians was that the Japanese arrived.
But even and then the Catholics, we're hiring no Catholics. Yeah, exactly.
Like the best way to overcome prejudice is to find someone new to be prejudiced against.
I think the thing that sort of is so amazing about it, or just like baffling for me, is for a group of people who are so like statistically small, like the alleged influence of this like tiny group of people, like it doesn't make sense. Like they can't possibly be controlling the society the way they're accused of, everything now, all the ills. It's like, but that doesn't, how?
No, we're always
possible?
looking for some small group with not much power to blame for everything. And it's ridiculous. I mean, we had a discussion at the ABC a few years ago, which is just like incredible to me, where we were talking about, diversity on our panels. And they were telling us that they don't really consider like Italian, like Greek, Lebanese, like these sort of things as being diversity anymore.
Yeah.
Now, there's a way you can read that's great, like which is, like
we're inclusive.
Yeah, it's great. Look at that. That's become so like part of our society that we don't even consider that to be like, okay, great. But also there's another part of it where you're like, that's weird as well, right?
Yeah.
Like where you're like, so I guess maybe hopefully that becomes the same with everyone, that you get to the point where there is such a ubiquity of everybody being able to have an opportunity. And maybe that is the one thing they miss with diversity, is that diversity should be genuinely diverse. Old, young, rich, poor, black, white, whatever. Like it needs to be all of those things. And if it feels like it is genuinely diverse, that everyone gets a chance to be included, then I think that probably is what the utopian aim is, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are some attitudes or some implementation of diversity is so on the nose that people feel like, oh, come on, like you are not actually including people, you are isolating them by saying this is a diversity initiative, whereas it doesn't. That's what I think the reaction is. It doesn't feel organic. It feels like it's like what do they call it? Virtue signaling.
Oh yeah.
That people are doing virtual signaling but at the same time, it's like, well, we have to start somewhere, right? Like,
but also when I first started doing comedy, there was like 3 gay comedians. 2 series ago on Question Everything, we had more gay or like people who are on the, in the LGBTQI community, TIQI community, who more than, they were the predominant, like if you wanted to categorize through that lens, which was not what we do, but just like if you looked at who we had booked, so many of the talent that we used on the show, were non-binary, gay, lesbian, whatever it might be, and so there was that idea of create a space for this, and then it just becomes a very normalized part of
you can't. I don't think you can achieve a meritocracy. When the
without
door
a
is
little
still,
bit of
I think you need to open the door for everyone, and then now we'll assess it on merits. Because how many mediocre, like straight white guys?
You've got to let everyone catch.
Let's a mediocre like.
You've got to let everyone catch up.
Yeah,
and then you can once everyone's even.
Yeah, then we can have the
meritocracy, right?
Yeah,
but for the people who are disadvantaged to be way behind, who could never have a meritocracy because they're starting 100 meters behind everybody else, and for some reason they've got hurdles in their lane when nobody else has hurdles in their lane, then you've got to get rid of some of those hurdles.
But also the idea of a meritocracy is just nonsense anyway, because every industry, every workforce has, like, if you know someone who work and you want to get it's so much easier to like, hey, can you have a chat to so-and-so? Are they looking for anyone? Can you put in a word for me? Like, that happens all the time. That's not meritocracy. That is you having an inside running on something.
But also, there is so much more to what makes up somebody's qualification for a job than literally
What's on
their
the
qualification for
their
a job.
CV. Yeah.
Like, to take it out of our industry, like, let's say a sports person, there's many occasions where somebody's like incredibly talented on the field. So in a meritocracy sort of way, they would be like a required player, but they are a terrible person off the field. Therefore, they're not good for...
Dude, acting is the one job where you could be the best, most talented, the most hardest working actor, and you will be unemployed. But someone from a reality show will get cast.
Right.
And it has nothing to do with your CV or your merits.
Well, I have a friend who's who's an actress who, is frustrated by the fact that, all the comedic roles that used to go to actresses now go to comedians or people who are in comedy.
Yeah.
Because, that's who gets cast in those comic roles now. People who aren't actors, they're comedians.
Well, the interesting, I don't know if we've talked about this before, but I was working with this acting coach once, and he was saying he was obsessed with, he ran these courses on auditioning, because auditioning is not acting. Auditioning is how can you best present yourself for a job,
thing,
right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so his whole thing was about
not being good at the job, being good at the job interview.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And his whole thing was about what is the X factor that people talk about with stars? Like, what is it?
Being on the TV show The X Factor.
So he actually tried to kind of create not a formula, but it's these elements. And what it sort of boils down to is how much of your unique perspective can you bring to a role? So the example he used is so when producers get casting tapes, right? They'll go to a casting agent for a show, and they'll get, say, 20 auditions that come in. So when they open up that folder on their computer, they'll have 20 different thumbnails of all the actors auditioning for that part. And he said, if you're a producer and you're sitting there and it's just 20 different people sitting in front of a blue screen, automatically your eyes are going to be drawn to the first person who's looking away, or maybe they're not even in the frame at all. Maybe they're going to enter, do something different. And then you sort of expand on that idea with your approach to performance. But he was saying that every casting agent he spoke to in the States, all the big casting agents, were no longer looking at drama schools for actors. They were going to comedy festivals because it was comedy festivals they felt like younger performers, you were getting a truer sense of what is their identity. Like, you can have an actor come out of drama school and do a flawless soliloquy from Hamlet or whatever. But you're not really, there's a lot of actors who can do that. But you're only going to get one actor who has this perspective on, marriage, or this perspective on dogs, or whatever it is.
But then it becomes about what is acting, right? Like, is acting the capacity to be your self, or some essence of who you already are, and put that into a role? Or is it being able to pretend to be anyone? You know what I mean? I know that it can be it's all of those things.
And I think there's chameleons.
Sort of,
you've got Gary Oldman, Daniel Day-Lewis, who are chameleons.
Yeah.
Like Robert De Niro, they're ciphers. They just transform into that person. But then you've got Harrison Ford, Julia Roberts, George Clooney, who are just them. Well, I imagine
a version
themselves.
Of them. Yeah.
With the charisma cranked up. And both are kind of legitimate. But I'd even argue with the ones who are the character actors, there is probably a commonality amongst all those roles that they're playing. There is something that Daniel Day-Lewis identifies with.
You're not seeing Gary Oldman play a teen heartthrob. But he can do it.
In the new Twilight?
Gary Youngman.
I wouldn't write him off. I could see him doing that. It's interesting, right? That it's that perspective, and that
do you think when you're acting, are you what version of
I'm
that
very
are you?
Much I'm Charlie.
You're Charlie.
Yeah.
Charlie in a police uniform. Charlie is a
because Home and Away moves so fast, right? And they create those characters and write those scripts so quickly. They kind of almost really they lean a bit more heavily on the actors and the directors than other shows that have more time, because they just by the nature of being a soap opera. And so I remember the first 3 months I was on that show, I'm like, well, I don't even know what this character is. I just seem to be wandering around Summer Bay, offering unsolicited advice to people, just the most annoying character. Yeah. But then there was I remember a scene where I was meant to be teaching, and so I just started ad-libbing some jokes. And as soon as the writer's like, oh,
he's funny.
He can be funny.
He can be funny.
Then they start giving you room to do that kind of stuff. And so I think that's definitely within the purview of the Harrison Ford type actors. Is Harrison Ford, he does earnest, highly focused everyman really well. George Clooney does charming, kind of whimsical, really well. So everyone has their thing, but I'm definitely like, anytime I have to do something that's very technical, like an accent or whatever, I'm always like, oh, this is going to fuck me up. Like, I feel like I'm putting too much work into the actual mechanics as opposed to just being present and listening and, you know.
I was talking to Kitty Flanagan.
Yeah.
And you can be completely like honest about this, by the way. So I was talking to Kitty Flanagan, and we were talking about Fisk, and she said that they had considered writing something for me in the last series of Fisk. Now I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what she said to me. And I know that her and her sister both came and saw my We're Legal show a couple of times. I think Penny might have seen it twice. And they both write Fisk together, so it's not out of the realms of possibility that that is a real thing. And she said to me, what character, like, what do you think you would be? Because I said, I'm not, like, I can't act. She said, well, you don't really, like, we cast a lot of people who aren't
Just play themselves.
actors. They kind of just play a version of themselves. But what would that be? I don't have a real awareness
So
around.
not playing Will Anderson,
So I'm
but
not
just playing you
me,
in a different
but
environment.
What sort of character do you think I would be? Like, say I'm in in Fisk, the concept of Fisk, right? It's a small, lawyer's office.
I could
sort of
see
thing.
you.
What sort of character do you think I could play on a show like that?
I could see you playing like, just say they had to bring in a consultant about a very specific topic and someone who is very sort of obsessed with a very kind of, just say, maybe they brought in like someone who does biomechanics or body language expert or something like that. Because I think that if you're very good at focusing down on one thing and researching. And I think that if you knew heaps about it, like if you got given that role and then you did a bunch of research on it and they gave you the room that here's a scripted dialogue, Will, but feel free to go off on a tangent if you think there's like a joke here or funny. I could see you doing that because that's essentially what you do on stage, right?
Yeah.
Is you hook onto a topic and then you explore that and keep going down that rabbit hole. So I think it would be a mix between just giving you a very specific parameter, which is like you are this and the scene is this, but then as the writer or producer is saying, we'll do one take as scripted and then we'll do one take where you can throw all your stuff into it. Because I think everyone can act. It's just that you've got to give them something that sits right in their hitting zone.
I mean, that's the interesting thing for me because I say all the time that I can't act, but that's a bit of a lie, right?
Well, you're acting on stage.
Because I'm always acting on stage. Yeah. And I know that I can convince people of something that is not true, or I can take them to a place and like make them feel that we're in that moment or in that thing. So I know that I have some capacity to create that sort of emotional energy, but I don't know. Yeah, if you had to write something for me, what would you write?
I think it would be that because your stage persona is the guy who makes an observation and then breaks apart. That's what you like doing on this show as well, is they bring you something and you like to deconstruct it and look at it from every part so that would be the scene. And so you'd have to contrive some situation in which they are talking to a forensics expert or a body language expert, or maybe even like you're just a fucking mechanic or whatever it is. But it is, you have the room to then, whatever the scene is about is not actually what the scene's about. It's actually about you going down a rabbit hole of whatever.
That's so interesting because I was playing a game the other day with a friend of mine. It was one of those games that like it just is it's a series of like questions.
Cards Against Humanity or something like that?
It's more like it'd actually be fun for us to play on this because it's just, what do you think would be my ... or what do you like? It's a kind of a how well do you know each other, or getting to know
speed
each
dating
other
kind of thing.
Yeah. It'd actually be quite a fun game for us to do an episode where we did that and see if it got us to places that we hadn't before. But one of the questions was, do you think I am more analytical or creative? Right, and her answer was that she thinks that I am a person who uses analytical skills for my creativity.
I agree with that.
So I break something down and then I use those parts to make something creative. I was like, oh yeah, that does actually feel like what it is that I do. And it's funny because that's kind of what you just said.
Yeah, because your analysis of things is the creative part of it, because not everyone can do what you do, and the way that you will, like the way you connect dots on things is I think it's a very specific skill that you have from years of either doing comedy or, media analysis or whatever it is that you are able to look at that thing, deconstruct what it means, and then either find similes or absurd, parallels to what that thing might be. And so, yeah, I think that's exactly what it is that you in the same way that like Adam Spencer uses maths and science as his jumping off point to entertain, or Tom Cashman with like, PowerPoints and that kind of stuff. Like, I think that's your one wood, to use a footy euphemism. That's your one wood, mate.
Well, technically, to use a golfing.
There you go. You're doing it already. We're almost at the end of the episode, but we haven't cracked that pack. Now, Mike, crack the pack. Mike, crack now. Oh, for fuck's sake. Okay, so
Crack that pack.
yeah, okay. You're just fucking
my
with us
favorite
now.
part of the show.
Now, the reason this caught my eye is it's called
Charlie's.
Basically melting moments.
Oh.
How do you feel about yo-yos, melting moments? Do you call it yo-yos or melting moments? What's your...
I would call it yo-yos, except
I think yo-yos are bigger.
I was recently sent, and so this will be a next time crack that pack, because I didn't bring it in today because I forgot that I'd been sent it, because it was in our break. And so it's at my house. I was sent from South Australia a packet of like biscuits that are called yo-yos, but they're not like what we would consider to be yo-yos. So they're a specific South Australian brand of biscuit.
Right.
They're just quite a kind of plain digestive style biscuit, it looks like. But they're called yo-yos.
Yeah, right.
For some reason. But I would have always called what you're talking
Why'd they
about.
send them to you? That sounds boring as shit.
I mean, I don't know. Just because of the local...
I thought we weren't accepting user submissions because they might be filled with cat food.
These were in a packet of... Like, I mean, they
It was a
weren't-
sealed pack.
Yes, it was a sealed pack. Yes.
Imagine if, like, we find out that someone at our local supermarket has filled one. Oh,
Well,
disaster.
firstly, the melting moments have melted. They've been
Yeah.
smashed. Well, actually, there's a couple of complete ones.
Can you guys see that? So I'm holding up to the camera.
Yeah.
Good reason to subscribe to
Completely.
Patreon, by the way. The first two melting moments have disintegrated.
It's
All right.
okay. There's some complete ones on the end there, so I'm going to actually have
Got to say, first thing while you
First
eat that,
impressions?
oh, the aroma is quite strong. Like they're raspberry.
They're raspberry bliss, and you can...
Oh, I don't know.
There's definitely a lot of raspberry.
Smells very artificial.
Very,
to me.
very raspberry.
Okay, so they're quite small. Like I'm used to a melting moment / yo-yo being a lot bigger. These
I
are
like this size.
okay.
Because I always find your melting moment yo-yo,
much.
if it goes too big, it's too much. It gets a bit,
Yeah.
the mouth feel. Whereas this looks the right size, but the smell of it is very disconcerting. I don't like the smell of it.
I always
at all.
like to read the blurb on the biscuit.
please
so
do.
Charlie's Fine Food Company says, take a moment
Take a moment.
to
yep.
ponder and enjoy our mini melting
Okay.
moments.
Well, if
Crafted
we've
with
pondered it. Well, we're going to enjoy it.
crafted with generations of love.
Oh.
Ugh. I don't think love in my
Gross.
biscuit.
Yeah, no, thank you.
And the finest of ingredients, these little bites of deliciousness packed with flavour and a touch of nostalgia
Oh.
are perfect for sharing or just for you. Eat one or the whole packet. We won't judge. I don't like this. Insanely delicious, they're described as.
Oh, the smell is disgusting.
Is
I've got
it?
to say, I don't like the smell at all. But
All right. I've never heard of this brand, Charlie's. Don't bring my name into disrepute. Baking Joy since 04. Oh, you've put that straight down. Oh, I don't think I'm going to like this.
yucky. That might be.
Oh,
I'm going to say,
that's like sand.
I think that's the worst biscuit we've ever tried.
Worse than Gay Time?
Uh,
No, Gay Time was worse. Oh, that's a D.
that's an F. That's awful.
I think if I was stoned, I'd probably finish that, but not.
There's not enough.
Sorry for the smacking, but you don't understand. It is the grittiest melting moment.
Sorry. Yeah, I apologize for that. But it's like the only
Well, I
way you
did
can explain the only way you can understand what just happened to us is to hear the smacking.
Yeah, that's horrible. All right, let's break it down. Texture, disgusting.
Disgusting.
Smell, disgusting.
Disgusting.
Filling, disgusting.
Disgusting.
There is nothing redeemable. You bring my great shame to the Charlie name. Charlie's
no.
Fine Food Company, Baking Joy since 04. I mean, that's bullshit. I doubt that. There's no way they could have been in business since 2004.
Who enjoys that?
No one. That's horrible.
That was awful.
And it doesn't even taste like raspberry.
No.
Is there any flavor to that? It just tastes like, bad aftertaste. I feel terrible.
Oh, yeah.
We should have like a punishment for like bad biscuits where like we throw them against the wall or something like that. But I
Well,
don't
no,
wanna
the
ruin
wall doesn't deserve it.
I don't know. Like maybe we fire them. Oh, is there a rooftop, listener? Can we go make a viral video of us throwing biscuits,
Throwing biscuits off the rooftop.
Cause a car accident on Clarendon Street. Somehow a tram loses control. Nick Mason was driving it. One of our friends dies because we threw a biscuit.
They are okay. I reckon they are.
I don't mind a melting moment.
They're not as bad as the gay time, but they are as close to as bad as the gay time as we've had, I reckon.
Yeah, that's equal. But that's
Yeah, I'm going to say equal worst.
Equal-
I'm actually
equal
going to say
worst.
equal worst. That is.
I mean, the fact that we didn't even get through more than a bite each, and they're tiny.
I wouldn't have wanted. I actually wish I hadn't even got through the bit I got through. It was. I'm still regretting it. It's still disgusting to me.
See, I wonder when these guys have been baking since 04.
Yeah.
But were you baking biscuits? Like, what was it? Because that is clearly being made by people.
You can't have made those since 04. They've got to be a specialist new one that
I'm
you're
just trying
trying.
to see what state they come
something,
from.
yeah.
What state are they packaged in? It
State
feels
of confusion. That's where they're from.
okay. Bentley East, Victoria.
Oh, all right.
Dan Andrews, I reckon.
Yeah, Dictator Dan.
Dictator Dan's biscuits.
He loves them.
They're the worst fucking biscuits of all time.
All right, I'm going to go there and I'm going to burn down that factory.
All right. We're
Wow.
going to wrap it up. Hey, thank you for coming back with us on this journey of TOFOP. We have a Patreon, patreon.com/everyonerelax. Bonus content, monthly episodes, ad-free episodes of every show on the network. Plus, we are releasing episodes early. So it's lots of good reasons to subscribe to our Patreon. Plus, I'm doing the Friday live streams again. So come say hello if you'd like. Will, you're doing shows at the moment?
Or eat the whole packet. We won't judge. If you ate the whole packet of those, I would
I'd judge you totally. What's
Absolutely
wrong with
judge
you?
I am doing shows. Comedy.com.au is the place to go to find out if I am near you. Maybe Canberra will be done by the time you hear this, but definitely Melbourne tickets and a whole bunch of other places will be available.
Imagine
so
if we
go and check that out.
die from eating these biscuits. Like this is the last recording of TOFOP. And then it's like, oh, they'll find it. And it wasn't even cat food. It wasn't even cat food.
I
that got
prefer
us.
cat food.
I would definitely eat cat. Honestly, if you said, here's like not a whole sandwich,
No,
but
but
one
like
of those
a
triangle.
like it's just a triangle
With cat food.
like a tuna fish sandwich.
all the rest
Is that
of
what it tastes
that.
like?
Yeah, I'd eat the cat food. At least it would get the taste of that shit out of my mouth.
Oh, oh my God, that was disgusting.
I'm Charlie Clausen.
I'm Alanis.